Hello, 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 and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new, welcome to my channel. My name is Shelly, and today we are doing another commentary. And this one, oh my goodness, we're gonna have so much fun with this one. At least I think so. Okay, today we are going to be talking about something I didn't think I'd be saying. Okay, classic literature is having a resurgence among the Gen Zs. Oh! Yeah, you heard me right, okay? The same generation that gave us the 15-second TikTok book reviews, okay? And speed reading challenges, they're also reviving interest in books that are literally 100 plus years old. And that's so interesting. From dark academia aesthetics to morally great characters, classic lit has somehow become cool again. It's actually so fun to see because I'm just like, wow, I didn't think I'd be seeing that. We know that trends basically follow a cycle. They come around and around and around again. But I thought classical literature would make its return, maybe 2 generations down the line. I just don't know. I just didn't see Gen Z as being the generation to bring it back or to really have an interest in it again. And I'm just like, whoa. And it's beautiful to see. And I kid you not, I've been seeing it more and more and more. And I'm like, okay, I'm for it. I'm for it. I'm for it. I don't read too much classical literature now, but I did read a lot when I started reading. And I've been picking it back up. So I'm just like, love to see it, love to see it. But now the question is, why? Okay. Is this just another BookTok trend that's gonna fade away after like 5 or so years, or is something deeper going on? And so today we're just gonna be breaking it down a bit, what's making the classics popular again. Not just that, like how has BookTok changed the way we read older books? I want to say older, but now let's just say old books because they're old. They're 100 plus years old. That is a century, And is this a short lived trend or are classics really, really here to stay? And, let's see. So, yeah, let's get into it. First and foremost, let's talk about why classics are suddenly trending. If you're not on BookTok, you probably wouldn't have noticed it. But, me, who even though I'm not posting as much on BookTok, I am engaging. And really, out of nowhere, I just started to see a surge and, people saying, oh, this is what I'm reading now. And I'm just like, okay. Okay, that's great. Yeah, for years, I keep saying classical, but classic literature was seen as intimidating. It was seen as boring or too academic. If you weren't in school, you probably weren't reading them, especially in the BookTok era. The people who were primarily on BookTok weren't reading, the classic books. But suddenly, classics like Dostoevsky and Jane Austen and Mary Shelley, they're all over BookTok. Now, I will say, when it comes to Jane Austen, I kind of feel like she's timeless. I feel like no matter what happens, she would always be in someone's hand, even if it's so people can say, oh, I read Jane Austen. I just feel like she's like that, that author that people will always read. Maybe it's because I love her so much. I definitely am biased there. But when I heard that people were picking up Dostoevsky, I said, what? 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 I heard that people were picking up Tolstoy. I said, what? Just like Jane Austen, if people were picking up Dickens, I'd be like, okay, some people will pick it up just so that they've read it. But they were picking up like more, I wouldn't even say obscure, but books that you wouldn't pick up unless you were like interested. I'm so sorry, like you wouldn't. If you want to say you read a classic book, you said that you read Dickens, you read Austen, say that, you read just those books. But I feel like people were picking up the more obscure reads, and they're not even obscure. They're obviously very popular. But yeah, it was very, very interesting to start seeing them all over BookTok. I was seeing, for example, even The Picture of Dorian Gray, which is Oscar Wilde's novel. And it's really interesting because this book, it became a dark academia favorite because of its themes of, vanity, beauty, and self-destruction. And I can hear it. I can hear it. Not just that, we have Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. People are finally realizing it's really not a monster story, but it's a deeply human tragedy about creation and regret. And one of my favorite books, Wuthering Heights, it seems that Gen Z saw toxic relationship and said, let's analyze it. You know what? I'm really happy about that one specifically because growing up, I heard about Wuthering Heights. I heard about it being this classic book, and so when I finally started reading, I'm just like, obviously, I had like a list of books that I had to read from like what I was hearing about what people said were the best books. So that's why I started out when I started my reading journey. I started out reading a lot of classics because I'm just like, okay, I have to read. I have to read a lot of Jane Austen. I have to read Dickens. I have to get into Shakespeare. I have to read Oscar. I heard all of these things, so I picked up those books first. And then I read Wuthering Heights. Like I said, love it, love it. But anyone who is idolizing that relationship, you need therapy. That is such a toxic relationship, bruh. But I really want to talk about that book because I love that book because it's one of my favorite books because it's one of the only books that I've seen where in a relationship, the FMC doesn't choose the toxic relationship because of love, but oh goodness, guys, we can go into this, but let's actually stick to the topic at hand. Anyway, let's stick to the topic at hand. People are reading all of these like old books, and you have to wonder what's changed. And the answer is simple. BookTok gave classics a rebrand. And I feel like me saying this, I feel like there's a marketing student now or someone who works in marketing, even marketing and publishing, and they're just like, yep, look at that, I know what I did was great. Honestly, marketing is so important in this day and age. Like, a rebrand can shift the focus. I even saw a video of a content creator speaking about Doechii, about how Doechii has been making music for years, and her songs were good. Her songs would have her fans, but she herself had a complete rebrand, and people just jumped on her and recognized her talent because of her rebrand. Not just her, people like Sabrina Carpenter and da 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 da. And that was speaking more from a fashion sense, but now speaking from a literary sense, classics got a rebrand. And that's so interesting. First and foremost, the aesthetic appeal. See, dark academia, gothic vibes, and cozy reading aesthetics made old books, they made them look like romantic and mysterious instead of like, dull and outdated. And if you've been on BookTok for a minute, you know that BookTok has its like dark academia corner, but even outside of that corner, there was a whole point in time where everyone was going for the dark academia, the light academia, just the academia aesthetic. And so I'm not even surprised that readers would see classic books, see the dark academia themes, and kind of latch onto it and read it simply because it carries those themes. I'm not surprised. We should have called it, if we're being honest. We should have called this trend. But not just that, there's a lot of character-driven analysis happening as well. So instead of analyzing writing style, which is what I think we're very much used to when speaking about the classics, BookTok made classics about toxic relationships, morally great characters, and emotional destruction, which is obviously the things that in a lot of popular books nowadays you see that people latch onto. These are like the tropes, these are like themes that people are loving. They're just like, they love delving into the toxic MMC, or the toxic relationship between these two characters and this and that. And BookTok loves a morally great character. So I think in shifting the point of the analysis, the focus of the analysis, you were able to capture more people. Because if you now just say, for example, let's go back to Wuthering Heights, and I'm gonna stick to it because, like I said, one of my favorite books for different reasons. If you if you just frame Wuthering Heights about being about this toxic relationship between two characters and her having to choose between it being a toxic relationship for love and what's best for her, da 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 da. If you frame it in that way, BookTok is just like, oh, you say a toxic MMC, toxic relationships. Oh, you're going to grab them every single time. And let's be real, a lot of people picked up the picture of Dorian Gray because it was advertised as, this book will destroy you. And when it comes to emotional marketing, it works a lot when it comes to BookTok. BookTok wants a book that will wreck you. Oh my goodness, I stayed up all night and I was sobbing. Oh my goodness, I don't like Song of Achilles. I still haven't read Song of Achilles, but I know that everyone advertises that book as, this book will wreck you. Song of Achilles and Circes, I believe. I think they're both by Madeline Miller. But everyone was just like, this book will wreck you, and everyone was picking it up because it would wreck them. And you have to wonder why the Gen Zs love books that will emotionally wreck them. That's a whole topic for another day. But regardless, the emotional marketing worked on the side of classics 100%. But here's where it gets like interesting, okay? See, BookTok is making people read classics in a completely different way. Yes, you have the old school literary analysis, where it focuses when you're analyzing books, especially the classics, you would focus on themes, you would focus on historical context, you would focus on the writer's technique. But then with BookTok, BookTok, as we know, BookTok focuses on vibes a lot. They focus on the aesthetics, and they focus on the characters as if they were in a modern TV show. Because with a lot of books, it's kind of just like, all you have to do is yassify, bring it to the modern era. If this was happening in today's day and age, what would happen? Because if you were to bring any of these books into 2025, as in like the setting, if we were to just bring it forward just a bit, it would be really, really interesting. And honestly, I can't say that I hate it. I don't hate it. I don't think so. Like, I can't say I hate it. I can't say that I'm really, really mad at it. Because if you really, really think about it, we have to think about, okay, if someone reads Anna Karenina and they read it because they love Tolstoy's commentary on Russian society, and then you have someone else who read Anna Karenina because TikTok said it was the most dramatic love affair ever written. You're just kind of there like, okay, we have two different perspectives here, two different ways of selling the book, but you have people reading the book. And this is where it's kind of interesting for me, because I do appreciate that people are picking up these books, because these are some of the best books I've written. They explore so many themes. One thing I will say though, those two examples that I gave, you're picking up the book and you're reading the book. But I think where I'm kind of drawing a line in the sand where I'm like crossing in and out. I'm really loving that people are picking up more classics. I actually think they were really well written, a lot of classics. I think the writing techniques were great. But I think where I'm kind of just like, I'm a bit on it is because what are you taking from this book? I think you have some books that address issues like classism, elitism, choice, identity, all of these. And then the way that people are reading the classics now, they'll be like, it was drama, it was a love triangle, rich man, poor girl, And I'm like, I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong, but but did you take anything else from it? So it's very, very interesting. I think people will take different things from reading, and that's just people, that's just how people read. Like we've discussed it on this channel before. You can be on the side of someone who wants to have a deep literary analysis, old school style, or you can be on the side of someone who's reading for fun and enjoyment, and they're analyzing it BookTok style. Right now the Bronte sisters, they're being marketed as like dark, messy romance authors, and you know what? I hear it. There are a lot of things explored in their books. That's true, but they were messy. They were very messy, and I think that's part of what definitely makes it entertaining. The messiness. Yes, you can analyze so many things, but their books were messy. Like they were messy, 100%. Dostoevsky is being treated like this philosopher of modern anxiety, and I feel like that's why a lot of people were reading. At one point, everyone was picking up his book. I said, what the heck happened? Did I miss something? Did I miss a memo? What was going on? Why specifically him? And then I'm just like, you know what? I do feel like this generation has a lot, or speak more about their anxiety than past generations. And so with Dostoevsky, I was just like, I hear it. I see why they would pick him up, okay? And obviously, we have our queen, Jane Austen. Like, I feel like people, I don't think you guys understand how much I love her. But yeah, Jane Austen, she's getting labeled as like the original romance queen. And I hear that one I support fully, because she was. Like 100%, like she's a great writer. I love her book so much, Like it's like when you're reading her books now, it's not just a school assignment where you have to write a report. No, it's we're rebranding them and we're getting people to experience the works of these amazing authors from back in the day. And that's good, that's amazing, because this rebrand is working. More young people are reading the classics more, like, like never before, to be honest. And I think it's super sweet to see. And yeah, like I said, what they take from it will be different from, everyone else because of how they're analyzing the books. But honestly, that's with every book. Every book, you will have a different opinion from me. You will have gleaned, something different from me. And that's okay. That's okay. And honestly, we have to actually, with looking at this topic, I think we actually have to like sit down and think, more Gen Z people are reading classics. Like, does it actually matter? Is this just another BookTok trend that will fade away, like I asked before? Or are we like witnessing a real shift in how the younger generations engage with literature? And honestly, I'd argue it's the latter. I think by by allowing, not even allowing, by seeing this happen, what we're seeing is like, literature being democratized. If that's a word, is that a word? Democratized, I feel it's the word. But yeah, so like before, classics were seen to be gate kept by academia. They were books that you read in school, for university, for a report, but it's never books that you would touch after. I find that funny because I did touch them after high school. But now TikTok has made these books like more accessible. They're framing them as books that anyone can enjoy, and anyone should enjoy, and not just English majors, lit majors, people who want to be writers or who want to be critics or who want to be reviewers. It's really just a book that anyone can enjoy. And not just that, the forgotten classics are being revived, and we can't fault that. Now, you guys have heard me say, like, no, I feel like some classics are like, they're classics, but I don't think that they're well written. I said what I said, like, The Scarlet Letter. I'm gonna say it straight. I do not think that was the best written book. Like, I was like, it was kind of basic. We can discuss that some other time, okay? But yeah, it's not just Pride and Prejudice. You have the lesser known classics getting their moment, getting their shine, and that's great. Like I said, when I saw the books that they were picking up, I was shocked because it wasn't the classic Dickens. It wasn't the classic Austen. It's like they were digging deep into the vault of classic books and reaching in to see what was at the very, very back. And that was really, really cool, because we know about Wuthering Heights, but, I rarely hear people speak about Villette, and that's just so cool. And, as someone who's criticized BookTok and criticized the books that are being released nowadays, because I really do feel like some quality has been lacking, I think this resurgence is proving that, this generation, and maybe even the generation after them, honestly, there's kind of a blurred line, if we're being honest. It really just proves that, younger people in general still want depth in books. And I think this is great for publishing, because I think with this resurgence of classics, there might be an upping of the standards. Like, oh, the younger generation are really loving these books. You writers need to go back to, up in the quality. Please, please, please. I beg. So yeah, despite the rise of like fast, short, digestible BookTok books, classics are proving that like deep, slow, complex literature still has a place. And guys, that's so beautiful. Like, you don't have to read the classics. I think it's more so the principle of the fact that it's proving that those types of books still have a place, are still capturing hearts. They still have a way to draw people in. And so from a commercial side, the publisher can see that these type of books are still winning. And so when it comes to authors who write these type of books, they will not be shut out immediately because they're not punchy and quick and short like some of the recently popularized books. So yeah, the difference is that the young people, yes, they are they're not just interested in fast and short. They are interested in like deep, slow, complex. It's just the fact that they've reframed it as more like emotionally resonant than just important literature that you should consume for this reason or that. And you know what, I think there is a place for that, because I've noticed that a few people are a bit emotionally slow. Like, the emotional intelligence in certain individuals is lacking. And so maybe actually having books and reframing them in like a more emotional way might actually be better for us, especially because, like I said, some people, because they have a literature degree, they think they all that in a bag of chips, and you not. Like, read the room, por favor. Maybe you need to start reading the books like the Gen Z reads them, like, maybe, yeah. So the fact that more people are reading Crime and Punishment, like, guys, War and Peace, Jesus is Lord. Goodness my, I don't think I would have ever seen the day that this generation was like reading it in the way that it was. So that's really, really cool. And like 5 years ago, I definitely wouldn't have seen this coming. So the fact that more people are reading books like that is absolutely amazing. Like, that says something about the state of literature, because I was starting to lose hope. But no, now we have more people like digging into it, and I think that will be a good thing for reading, for the publishing industry, for the future of books that are being written. But the big question is, as I've asked several times before, is this just a fleeting aesthetic driven trend, or will classic literature continue to thrive? I know a lot of people think it is temporary, because yeah, trends, especially BookTok trends, they have a tendency to kind of just fizzle out after a few years. So a lot of people are thinking that as soon as this, new aesthetic takes over BookTok, whatever that aesthetic might be, that the classics will just go back to gathering dust. But like, others think that a lasting shift is on the horizon, because the younger generations are genuinely reclaiming classic books as their own, and I think that's the key right there. They're reading these books and they're not analyzing it in the same way. They're adapting it to their culture, in terms of like, Gen Z culture. They're adapting it to how they see the world and how they see life, and they're finding enjoyment in the book still, just in the reframing that they did. So personally, I do think it's a mix of both, honestly. Aesthetics may fade, that's 100% true, but the fact that people are picking up books like Dracula in the Iliad, guys, the fact that they're picking that up at all, that's a win. I haven't even read the Iliad yet. It's on my list. It's been on my list for ages, honestly, but I was just like, I'll get to it eventually. I'm not gonna die, by God's grace. But yeah, so even though the aesthetics may fade, just the fact itself that they're picking up the books, like, that's a win. And the thing is, I think classics will never be mainstream popular. I just don't think that that's going to happen. Like, I don't. But they're proving that they don't have to be mainstream popular. They're surviving, and currently they're even thriving, in pockets of engaged readers who actually care about them. And even before this resurgence of the Gen Z's reading classic literature, there was always a pocket of readers who adored classic lit. They didn't even have to be lit majors. A lot of times they were, but they didn't have to be. There was always a pocket of readers who loved, the Canterbury Tales. Like, there's just always a pocket of them. There's always space for it. So even though classics, and yeah, in my opinion anyway, will never really be mainstream popular, they don't have to be. They will always have an audience that love them, that adore them, that cherish them, that will root for them, and that will push them on to others who will then love, cherish them, and root for them. And most importantly, I think that young readers, they're not just reading the classics, because, like I said, they're reframing it and they're making it their own. That's special. I think that's absolutely amazing, and that will help it to go beyond a passing trend. Honestly, at the end of the day, BookTok, it's showing that it hasn't killed deep reading. It hasn't killed, going into depth with books. It's reinvented it. At least we're seeing a bit of reinvention, which is really, really cool. Yeah, people are reading classics differently. That's true. Some of it is aesthetic driven. That's also true. But I think in the grand scheme of things, some of these points don't matter as much as we would like to make them. More people are engaging with great literature. And at the end of the day, that's a win. Like I said, not all classics are great. Some classics I do not think are that great. I think they're kind of mid. I stand on that. But a lot of the classics are great. And we have more people engaging with them. So at the end of the day, I think that it is a win. But you let me know. Have you fallen into, like, the reinvigoration of reading the classics? Do you read classics at all? Were you always a classic lover? And is there a classic that you would like to get into? I know currently that with R.F. Kuang's new book, Catabasis, which is coming out is it August? I believe in August this year. There are a lot of people who are like going deep. And I think like if there is ever a time for me to read the Iliad, it'll probably be now. But a lot of people are reading Iliad, Homer. They're reading Dante's Inferno, which honestly is a masterpiece. Honestly, when I'm so many things to say. But I think, yeah, with that book alone coming out, it's gotten a lot of people to like dig into the classics. They're just like, we need to know, we need to know where to start before we open that book up. And I'm just like, okay, so now we're going to have a lot of people just quoting Dante. We're going to have a lot of people screaming about, I'm your Virgil. I'm just going to be here like, oh God, please have mercy. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting now that everyone's like picking up this book in preparation for her new book. But it'll be fun, I think. I think it'll be fun because I've always seen Dante as, I think he has some of the best writing I've ever seen, especially when it comes to fantasy. As a fantasy reader and secret writer, I'm just like, this is, yeah. Yeah, okay. But it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this. But let me know, like, do you think it's a fad? Do you think it's going to go away in like 2 or 3 years when a new trend comes about? Or like, do you think it's like here to stay? Let me know. And also let me know your preference. Do you read classics? Are you joining the Gen Zs and reading more classics? Like, where do you stand in all this? But yeah, can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. And if you are a fantasy lover or a tragedy lover, are you going to be picking up R.F. Kuang's new book later on this year? And are you reading the classics in preparation for the book? Or are you just going to go in there like blind and just vibe? Let me know, guys. I am excited to hear about it all. I'll be seeing you guys soon. Bye.